Yep, that was to be the case. I'm not sure where the person might be here now shortly. But firstly, I just want to start out by addressing some of the language being used here today in the Chamber by some of my colleagues across the House. Certainly there is nothing wrong with being a migrant, and certainly Ireland should know that. But we should also know that refugees are not migrants, and that this is a refugee crisis that we are talking about. There's nothing wrong with seeking a better life where you can find it, but refugees are simply seeking to live. As the poet Warsan Shire wrote in our poem, Home, you have to understand that no one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. No one burns their palms under trains, beneath carriages. No one spends days and nights in the stomach of a truck, feeding on newspaper unless the miles travelled means something more than a journey. These refugees, as Shire puts it, only leave home because home is now the mouth of a shark. This is not a migrant crisis, and to claim it is to minimise and to trivialise the issue. Were the men and women who made their way to Ellis Island from Ireland with nothing in their stomachs but a burning desire to keep going on, were they migrants? Surely we as a people know what refuge means and understand the plight of those who flee an inhospitable home. Every country has its periods of political strife, but Syria was the victim of Western intervention, which turned the country upside down and turned unrest into all-out chaos. It's a proxy war which we are complicit in by our subservience at Shannon. The international community's failure to challenge the countries which secretly and sometimes openly support the barbarism of ISIS has led us to this crisis. Still, we shake the bloody hands of the Saudi leaders and send condolences to the tyrannical dynasty shamefully flying our tricolours at half-mast. We are partly responsible for this crisis, and that calls for us to be clear about what the crisis entails and to be generous in our response. So far, we have failed utterly to live up to promises to take thousands of refugees from Syria. We must be a strong voice against the EU-Turkey deal. This is a disgraceful move by the EU which gives comfort to a nation which has done little to tackle ISIS and everything to exploit the war to wipe out the Kurds within their borders and their political movements. We must reject this deal and move towards a meaningful plan for the distribution of refugees throughout Europe. We should look on this as an opportunity to be a beacon for decency, compassion and humanity to the world. Instead, we have sat on our hands, save an honourable few. I would like to pay tribute to the brave people of the LE Etna who have saved countless lives in the Mediterranean. Their work should be an example. We betrayed their dedication by supporting a plan which would place those lives back in harm's way in Turkey. I want to mention as well as the long-running refugee crisis that exists as a result of the Israeli occupation of Palestine. There are 5.1 million Palestinian refugees. They span generations. These families have adults with them who have never known a life outside of a refugee camp. Who have never known a home and have never known their homeland. They are situated almost entirely within the Middle East and so at the mercy of often unstable political regimes. They are now once again the victims of another crisis. Over 500,000 Palestinians were in camps in Syria. They are now double refugees from a country which we buy arms off. We must work harder to challenge the occupation of Palestine, the blockade of Gaza, the apartheid wall, and all of the brutal measures used by Israel to make Palestine a place where no Palestinian can truly call home. We must do this so that they are refugees no more, and that they can have not just a right to return, but the ability and the reason to do so. Ireland must be a voice and an ally for today's refugees, as we were never able to be for our own refugees. I understand, Deputy Boyd Barrett, you've shared